All right, so let me be real with y'all for a second. I think one of the weirdest things about getting older is realizing your trajectory doesn't always miss. Life is just full of edits. You had a version of how this thing was supposed to go. The career you were building, the body that you thought you have by now, the money that you thought you would be further along with, the version of your family you envisioned when you first started building everything. And then life hits you with the, nah, we doing this a little different. And now you're sitting here trying to figure it all out. All right, so what am I exactly supposed to do with this version of me? See, that's where this episode came from. Because this one closes the first real arc that we've done on Word Forward. You know, episode 14, it was about the identity of the hurt leader, right? And what happens when life changes the role in your home? And then when you don't recognize yourself in that new role. Episode 15, we talked about the relationship in that situation and what happens to two people that love each other through those rough seasons. And now episode 16, because once the role changes and your relationship adjusts, the next question actually becomes this: what do I build right now? Let's talk about that part. You see, nobody really prepares you for when life changes up the plans on you. Not destroys the plans, just changes them. And there's a real difference between those two things. A ruined life, people know how to talk about that. There's language for that. There's sympathy that goes along with that. But a different life than the one you were working towards, that messes with people in a whole nother way. It's not dramatic enough to get sympathy from the outside, but it's heavy enough to sit on your chest every morning when you wake up. You know, most people, they have a version of peace that they're moving forward towards. You know, by this age, I should be doing this, right? Or I thought I would have been here by now. Or I thought I feel more settled in my life at this point. I thought I had it all figured out. And then life, it starts lifing. Kids, responsibilities, your health, those hard seasons that hit you without warning. And now you're sitting there like, all right, so what now? That question right there, that's where a lot of people quietly lose themselves. Not because they're weak, and it's not because they're lazy. They don't want to quit. It's because no one really teaches you what to do when the blueprint changes up on you. Welcome to Word Forward, y'all, where we build structure in this noisy world together. I'm Damien J Branch, and this is episode 16. Today, we're going to talk about that rebuild stage. You know, not the social media version of it, the honest version of it. You know, where life changed, the plans shift, and now you're building something meaningful from where you actually are. So let's get into that. Like, real quick, let me say something that people really don't talk about enough. Sometimes you have to grieve the old version of the life that you thought you were building. Now, stay with me on this one, because grief isn't always about death. Sometimes grief is just, damn, I really thought the play was going to go a whole nother way. And that's a real thing to feel. You know, that deserves acknowledgement, because without acknowledging that, you'll quietly become bitter, not angry on the outside, not dramatic with it, just bitter. And a quiet bitterness is real sneaky because it doesn't knock on the door and introduce itself to you. It starts showing up and how you respond to things. You start comparing your timeline to other people online, your progress to what you thought you had by now. You'll start to feel a slight resistance when people start to share good news with you. You get that must be nice kind of energy. You never really say it out loud, but you feel it. And that feeling is the grief that never got processed. It turns into resentment instead. And the most dangerous thing about quiet bitterness, right, is what it does to the vision of what's still possible. You start to say things like, that probably won't work either. At this point in my life, it's probably too late for me to start over. And you know, that's not lazy talk. That's what carrying unprocessed loss sounds like. Grief is the thing that actually lets you put it down, not forgetting it and not pretending that it doesn't matter to you. You just acknowledge that the plans have changed on you. and then you decide to move forward anyway. You see, you can't skip that step. People who try to skip that step, they never move forward. They just get really good at looking like they do. Just because the picture switched up, it doesn't mean that your purpose did. Sometimes God just redrew your roadmap. And most people call it a dead end, when it's actually just a divine detour. Here's the thing. We need to stop worshiping the old version of ourselves. Seriously. Because the old version you isn't supposed to have access to where you're going right now. I know that might be a little hard to hear, especially if you miss who you used to be. How fast things might have clicked for you, how much energy you might have had before you had to slow down. Think about a professional athlete that had to retire early because of an injury. The ones who struggle the most aren't always the ones with the biggest setback. They're the ones who try to keep being who they used to be on the field, instead of figuring out who they are right now in the game. They're holding space for a position that had to end, and every day they don't let go of that, they can't pick up anything new. But the ones who transition well, who build careers, businesses, legacies, they're not the ones who forgot the game. They're the ones who respected what the game taught them. And then they ask, what does this experience make possible for me today? Different stage, same competitive spirit, new arena. And here's something I had to sit with myself. I used to think that hard seasons were interruptions to my life. The injury, the setback, the time at home, those are just pauses between the good parts, the stuff I'd get through, and then finally get back to what mattered to me. But what if those weren't interruptions? What if those were just chapters? What if the version of me that came out of those seasons, more patient, more strategic, more clear about what actually matters to me, is the version of me who I'm supposed to be to build this? You see, pain chiseled me into the man I never was before. And honestly, I'm not supposed to be the same after that kind of construction. The guy before was just moving too fast and not always right. I had high energy, but it wasn't pointing in the right direction. I had a lot of ambition, but not enough wisdom to match it. And see, those seasons didn't take anything from me that I actually needed for where I was going. They just removed the parts from me that would have slowed me down. And in the middle of it, it feels like loss. It doesn't feel like preparation. But looking back, it's definitely preparation. Almost every single time. What if life wasn't trying to destroy your plans? What if it was slowing you down long enough so you can actually see the big picture clear enough to mature you, sharpen you, prepare you for what actually matters? The strongest version of you will never be the loudest one. It's always the wiser one. And wisdom, it doesn't come from things going smoothly. It's earned from going through things that wasn't supposed to go the way they did. The hard seasons didn't take anything from you that you actually needed for where you were going. Sit with that. Sit with that while I say something else that might hit a lot of us. People got to stop thinking value only looks one way, especially in families and especially in relationships. Somewhere along the line, right? People reduce value to only money. And I'm not going to argue about money. Bills matter. Stability matters. All of that is real. But the leadership could look different than what you were taught to expect. You see, sometimes leaders look like building structure, keeping everyone mentally okay, especially when things around y'all are falling apart. There's a kind of leadership that's invisible until it disappears. The person that makes sure all the bills are organized, the one who knows what kid needs what attention or what day of the week, the one who de-escalates the situations before they become dramatic situations. Nobody posts about that. There's no highlight reel for dad at 11 p.m. working on that tough math problem or building something with hot glue and construction paper, especially when he has his own stress that he should be managing at the moment. There's no viral moments for holding it all together. But that leadership, that's the foundation that everything else gets built on. And the people that benefit from that, it often doesn't get recognized until it's gone, until that steady person isn't steady anymore, until the one that managed to hold everything together is the one that needs someone to help them hold themselves together. And suddenly that's when everyone realizes how much weight was actually being carried without anyone acknowledging it. So if that's you, the one quietly keeping everything functional while the world thinks you're just sitting at home, that's not a consolation prize for what you used to do or who you used to be. It's just a new form of leadership that requires more discipline that a lot of people haven't developed. If life changed what you could do right now, that doesn't erase your value. It might just mean you have to learn how to lead differently. It doesn't mean that you're diminished. It just means that you evolved. Another thing that life taught me that I didn't really want to learn, the dream can survive. The route towards that dream might not. A lot of people struggle with that because a lot of us get attached to how we thought the play was supposed to go. When you're driving and your GPS says recalculating, it doesn't say that your destination doesn't exist. It doesn't say that your trip is canceled. It just says that the road that you were on isn't the right road for you anymore. And then it shows you a new way to get to where you were trying to go. And most of the time, the new route gets you exactly to where you're trying to go, maybe even a little faster. But you could never get there if you're still sitting at that turn that you missed, arguing with your GPS about how your original plan was supposed to work for you. It's adaptability, y'all. I think that's the most underrated skill in the conversation about success. Everybody wants to talk about work ethic, the vision, the consistency. All of that stuff matters. But the people that actually make it through those hard seasons and come out on the other side building something real, they're not just more disciplined than you. They're just adaptable. When plan A gets taken off the table, they don't spend 3 years mourning it. They just ask, what's still available for me? What do I know now that I didn't know before? What can I build from exactly where I'm standing right now? They treat their new situation as information, not a verdict. People who stay stuck in that what was supposed to happen mode, they're using the past as the reason to not fully commit to their present self. They start saying things like, I'll go hard once things stabilize. I'll try to build that again once things get back to normal. But things don't always stabilize on your schedule. And by the time you're done waiting around for normal to show up, you lost years you could have been building something new. The real danger isn't the hard season. It's just your response to it. Because you just might be one pivot away from that thing you prayed for, and you'll never realize it because you're too busy mourning your plan A to plan B. Plan B wasn't a failure. Plan B is just plan A with more experience attached to it. That's all. The hard season didn't take anything from you that you actually needed for where you're trying to go. It took away the parts that would have slowed you down on the way there. And in the middle of all of that, I know it feels like loss. But on the other side, it's just preparation. Remember that. When life gets hard, your house will feel it. Your kids feel it. Your partner definitely will feel it. The energy in your home reflects the energy that you carry into it. And kids especially. Children read energy before they can even form words. They know exactly when something feels a little too heavy for the moment. When dad is quiet in a different way. When mom's smile feels just a little forced today. They can feel it in the atmosphere before anybody says a word. And that's not pressure from them. It's just their perspective. They're not watching you to see if your life will just get harder. Life gets hard for everybody. They're watching to see what you turn into when life becomes hard for you. They want to see, do you fold? Do you disappear? Do you stop trying? Or do you adjust to your playing field? Because that kind of resilience, it gets inherited. Your children will learn how to handle adversity by watching you handle yours. Not in the future, not when things are better. Right now, today, in real time. And that's one of the most important things that you can ever build in front of them. And trust me, that doesn't require a paycheck. So let me leave you with this. Build anyway, even when your timeline changes, even when your life feels like it's on a slow burn, especially if things look different than the version of you had in your head. Build anyway. Because the dangerous thing isn't life changing up on you. The dangerous thing is to stop building because it did. And I know someone that's hearing this right now might be feeling a little behind, maybe feeling a little discouraged, feeling like, damn, that wasn't supposed to go down like that. That wasn't supposed to happen to me. Maybe not, but hear me clearly. Different doesn't mean done. Life changing the blueprint doesn't mean that the mission disappeared on you. Sometimes the road changed because you changed. And maybe what you're building right now, it has more wisdom in it, more patience, more purpose than anything you would have built before. You know, when you were moving fast, but not always moving correctly. The blueprint changed, but the architect is still there. And that's the only thing that was ever non-negotiable. Maybe life didn't ruin your vision altogether. It just matured it. Maybe the blueprint changed because you changed. And maybe the question isn't, why didn't life go how I planned it? Maybe the real question just is, what can I still build from right here, where I am right now? Because if you're still breathing, you're still building. The blueprint changed, but your work still matters. And if this episode hit, share it with somebody that's in that rebuilding stage right now. Somebody that needed to hear that different doesn't mean done. Follow Word Forward on all platforms, Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, and drop a comment and tell me this. What did that hard season teach you that the easy one never could? The inner circle's in the description so we could take this conversation a little further. This is Word Forward, y'all. I'll see you in the next one.